The sky so far, but I can't lose it.
Wreck avoidances.
Stay low. He's high, stay low.
Daring passes.
Oh, you're gonna get it.
Silly jumps.
Oh my god, a drive-through.
The thrill of victory.
They're against the wall. Good win, Mark. Stay low.
And the occasional mishap.
My sim crash.
This is the DMLC Racing Channel.
A new beginning with familiar faces. For the first time, Lionheart is going back to its roots. 18 races to determine who is the best and the most exciting form of auto racing on the planet. 200-mile-an-hour Indy cars, inches from disaster or glory. There can only be one inaugural champion, whose name will be etched into the Lionheart history books. Find out next. The Lionheart Speedway Series, presented by DMLC Racing Channel, starts now.
Last time out for the Lionheart Speedway Series presented by the DMLC Racing Channel, it was a drag race among teammates. Robert Malechko was able to eke out a close finish over Alexis Newsom in a barn burner of a race at Michigan International Speedway. Slipstream and massive runs were big parts of that 200-mile event. But today, the drivers will be tested in a different way. As we say hello, everyone, and welcome to iRacing's virtual Kentucky Speedway for the SimXperience Kentucky 200, presented by Chris Fowler Racing. Welcome to RaceSpot TV and ESTV's coverage of the Lionheart Racing Series, powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperxgaming.com, and don't forget to use the promo code LionHRT15 for 15% off orders. My name is Justin Prince. Alongside me is Lorenzo Bonder with Arjuna Kankipati in the producer's seat for tonight's action. TV cameras are provided by Esteban Balu at TrekCams22.com. Live timing and scoring is available tonight through our partners at RaceBot.tv/Indy. And with that, let's dive into our SimXperience countdown to green as we're getting ready to race under the lights here at Kentucky Speedway, the legacy version of Kentucky Speedway here in Sparta, Kentucky, Lorenzo.
Yeah, as we are narrowly closer to our Indianapolis 500, which will be the second of the Triple Crown events here, Justin. And can't wait to see it. This is going to be a very difficult track. The legacy version is not the easiest one to let these cars handle. And one funny fact, was the cars and the track itself, they don't mix, because the last running off the real life was actually in 2011 before the DW12 came out.
And don't forget as well, this is the end of the first half of the season. This is halfway through at the completion of today's race with that double points paying event and Triple Crown race in Indianapolis in July being the start of the second half of the campaign. Let's take a look at our driver standings presented by the DMLC Racing Channel, where Alexis Newsom is your points leader for factory-backed entering today. Tony Shaw and Christopher, Matt Taylor rounding out the top 5 in the standings. A very competitive point standings this season, Lorenzo.
Yeah, very competitive, and it got a little bit shuffled up with the Michigan race, where Newsom actually managed to get away with the top 3, and Matt Taylor was in the conversation, right, to actually get that win up to the point where he actually had to come down to the pit lane and do his final service and had to play catch-up, just couldn't do it. Had to wait on the yellow that never came at the end of the race. But Newsom really good lead so far against Michelle and Christopher.
Absolutely. It was intriguing, and it helped shuffle the team standings presented by HyperX, with Adrenaline Motorsports on top of the board with 953 points. Team Race First Black with some great speed this season. But Factory Back, keep in mind, has been able to go to victory lane multiple times as well. Team Race First Red rounds out the top 4 with Synergy Motorsports Blue in 5th position. So fairly tightly packed, but impressive runs in recent weeks from Factory Back, Team Race First Black to provide the pressure to the gauntlet that has been Adrenaline Motorsports.
Yeah, and I think we should be starting to look towards Factory Back a little bit more cautiously now, because they can become a factor in the second half of the championship, because with Malech's back-to-back wins in the last year, in the last 2 races, and Newsom climbing up on the ranks and maintaining that leadership spot, it's something that drivers should start to take notice. Even though they're not close to Adrenaline Motorsports, they could become a factor again after the Indianapolis race.
Absolutely. Let's take a look at our rookie standings presented by Butt Kicker, where Alexis Newsom not only is your points leader, just so happens to be a rookie as well. The rookies have been very strong this season, to say the very least, Lorenzo. You can also point towards Matt Taylor and his speed in multiple different series. So Alexander Van der Sant with some great speed, but Barrett Rolfe has been someone who's had the charge to the pack multiple times throughout the season and has been able to do so in several cases. At Michigan at one point, went from the back of the field to the front in the span of 6 laps to start that event.
And that was insane. Another guy that actually jumped up some of these spots over here was Jeff Hysong as well here, Justin. He was a third driver between the battle against Malechka and Newsom at the finish line in Michigan. So bumped up, I think, 1 or 2 spots in the championship off the rookies. So the independent driver is starting to become stronger in the second half of the season.
It's going to be very interesting to see how those independent drivers fare out in the standings. But with that, let's take a look at our series details presented by Minus 273, the premier name in karting gloves. Their industry-leading gloves are super lightweight and durable, made of breathable polyspandex. Whether you're a kart or sim racer, Minus 273 gives you the control to reach victory lane. For more information on Minus 273's full line of gloves and apparel, visit minus273.biz. Don't forget to also use Minus 273 LHRS15 for 15% off orders. Custom fix setups with the Delara DW12 means these drivers are going to have to rely on just their hands and feet tonight, Lorenzo. And at Kentucky, that can be fairly tricky around this circuit.
Yeah, despite Kentucky being kind of large in terms of, racing in the corners, it isn't tight as you would see in some other tracks. The whole track is basically banked from start to finish. It differs between where you start and where you finish, though. But the thing is, the aero draft here is going to be really strong, especially when you are in those big packs, right? So expect a very clunky start of the race. And I think one thing that we should also take notice is the pit lane, because the pit lane is much anticipated than you normally would think of. So drivers would have to be very mindful where they want to come in first for full safety on the track.
Going to be very critical indeed. And keep in mind, this is the 5th trip to Kentucky with the DW12 in series history. James Krahula just so happens to be the only active driver with the previous victory at Kentucky. And this race in the past has finished twice under caution. That was back-to-back season 4 and 5 of the LIS. They also went back-to-back in seasons 8 and 9. Just so happens with the Dollar IR 18 in the IndyCar series as well. But the funny thing is, when it comes to that, is despite the 50% rate of finishing under caution with the DW12, the last race produced just 4 caution flags in the 200-mile event. So there's not necessarily the guarantee you'll get caution flags at a track like Kentucky.
Yeah, it's one of those things that sometimes you get some crashes that do not trigger the yellow flags because you basically are crashing out on yourself. So there could have been I'm not going to say mishaps, but the incidents like that do not trigger a yellow. But then again, Kentucky is one of those tracks is going to be more atrocious than what we actually saw in Michigan. So drivers, again, will have to be very mindful of lifting off the gas, let the car roll, and avoid the aero wash being so heavy during the corners to avoid the wall.
By the way, one quick fact as well. Qualified record just so happens to stand today for both the IR18 and DW12 from Dan Guerin here at this racetrack. But we're down to the final minute or so of practice, and right now, Robert Malechka, no surprise, your quickest driver so far, 8:24.845. Chris Fowler, Trevor Malone, Alexander Vanderstant, and Charles Teed rounding out the top 5. Lots of quick speed, a majority of the field running 25 seconds or quicker on the circuit, Lorenzo.
Yeah, it's just downrightly insane. Everybody's actually separated by 0.4 of a second except for Jeff Hysong. He's the only detractor in Jason Galvin, which hasn't put up a lap. But everybody else split up by 0.4 of a second. It doesn't sound much, Everybody running one together. The draft, especially in the tri-oval start-finish line section, is very important. That will give you a good run over here. And you can kind of also run the apron in the start-finish line, even though it is a yellow line, it doesn't look like it.
And keep in mind that sun continuing to settle on down in sim time. It's just past 9 p.m. on iRacing Day, May 15th, 2021. Partly cloudy skies for tonight's action as qualifying is just about set to go from the legacy version of Kentucky Speedway in Sparta, Kentucky. The question is, which drivers will be able to gladiator their way to the front? It's going to start with qualifying. Those drivers will have 5 minutes, 2 solo qualifying laps to be able to set their best possible times around the circuit here. And the biggest questions is, how do you try and qualify to your best ability at Kentucky, especially not just with the slippery access road, which drivers have already had some issues with in qualifying, it should be worth noting, but also the fact that you need to be able to build up that track position speed with how much this track can vary in terms of performance.
It's a very tricky scenario for you to actually tackle on this. I think the trickiest part is getting out of the pit lane because there isn't much runoff between the inside wall and then the runoff area of the apron. Then once you're out on the track, the thing you need to do is just remain on the outside line as you're looking right now. And then whenever you feel comfortable, duck down, use the progressive decline of the banking to build up speed. And after that, try to set up the best lap possible.
Who do you feel it favors the most as a result than this type of a racetrack based on what you've seen from competitors in the series then?
I would say basically this is kind of a mimic of Michigan, what we saw in the last race. So if you those who can maximize the exit out of the pit lane and go for it on the very first lap, guys like Vanderstant, Malechka would be the perfect example. Even Alexis Newsom at some point, she's good at qualifying, might take a really good advantage at this.
Taking a look as drivers are in the midst of qualifying. Alex Gouillon with the quickest time so far, 8:25.092. Mike Rigney now behind, and Trevor Malone to the top of the board for the time being with a 25.059. And that's a tie with Ken Hacker, in fact, on the pylon. So it's that tight in qualifying. We were expecting that coming in. Ron Hacker also putting in a pretty impressive time to make it a three-way tie for what is now second position behind Vern Hawkins III.
That is insane.
Welcome to Kentucky.
Do we have a four-way tie right now? No, it's for second floor. No. It's my lifetime that is playing tricks right now.
Yeah. It is a three-way tie for second, and then a two-way tie for fifth position on the pylon as we're following along with Tony Showen, trying to bump up his time from a 26 flat the first time around. The second time around, it's a 25-1. That's only good enough to 11th position on the pylon. Christopher, Alexis Newsom, Luis Gonzalez Nunez, Nick DeGroot, George Anzaldo are also on the racetrack, setting qualifying laps at the moment with 2 minutes to work with. And Alexis Newsom has been having a very impressive season so far. 2 victories, 4 top 5s, 5 top 10s, just 1 pole so far on the campaign.
And she's the point leader nevertheless, right? So that's what makes it more impressive. Her race pace can be very, very, very good if compared to qualifying, as she's about to finish the first lap.
We'll see where the first lap lies at 209 miles an hour, 26 flat for the first time around. Needs to pick up a full second time around to be able to bump up the pylon. Vern Hawkins III continuing to stay up at the top of the board in these final few moments, looking for what would be Vern's first pole of the season. But for Alexis Newsom, taking the apron to try and cut some time, move Alexis Newsom to the top of the board at 26.037. Robert Malechka looking to counter Lorenzo.
Yeah, looking to counter, but very impressive lap from Newsom. That tighter line she did between 1 and 2, then not riding the full extent of the wall like Malechka is doing right now. It's quite impressive.
Malechka going way low on the apron. How about by about 1,000th of a second to take the pole with less than 30 seconds remaining? What a time from Robert Malechka III. And for Malechka III, if the time sticks for the next few seconds, it will end up being the 3rd pole for the factory-backed driver this season, and just the 5th start for Malechka III all-campaign. The answer is it will stand, as it's time to take a look at your starting grid for today's action here at Kentucky. Your starting grid presented by Butt Kicker, as Robert Malechka III starts on the pole with a 25.036, 1/1000th of a second quicker than Alexis Newsom. Matt Taylor and Vern Hawkins III start in row 2, with Joe Branch with one of his best qualifying runs of the season in 5th alongside Trevor Malone. Both Hackers will start in row 4, Ron Hacker to the inside, Ken Hacker to the outside. With Charles Teed and Dark Horse Motorsports in 9th. AJ Musselman will start in 10th, with Matt Houston in 11th. Jason Galvin starts in 12th in the LPM Cancer Down Machine. Matt Wagner starts 13th, with Nick DeGroot in the middle of the pack in 14th. George Anzaldo and Craig Forsyth 15th and 16th, with Christopher Kraigsky, along with Alex Gouillon 17th and 18th. Christopher and Mike Rigney will start in 19th and 20th, Luis Gonzalez Nunez in 21st. 22nd goes to Dean Mull, along with Paul Jenkins and Tony Showen 23rd and 24th. Barrett Rolfe once again in their qualifying performance for the Ascari Autosport machine starting 25th. Chris Fowler will start 26th. Alexander Van Dusen will start in 27th, with Jeff Young in 28th, rounding out your competitors today at Kentucky Speedway. Let's take a look at your featured onboard cameras for the SimXperience Kentucky 200 presented by Chris Fowler Racing in just a few moments for what's expected to be an intense race here today. Lorenzo, I'll turn to you then for the quick moment. Your thoughts on how this could play out?
It's going to be very interesting. I can see a very clustered start, and I hope they get all the way cleaning. I wouldn't be surprised if there could be a yellow flag just because of the aero wash and maybe the looseness of the cars going to turn 1. But let's see.
Let's see those onboard cameras first. With Barrett Rolfe with the SimXperience on board. SimXperience, makers of the AccuForce Pro V2 direct drive steering system. For more information, visit SimXperience.com. Tony Shawan has the HyperX on board. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers, and HyperX is always ready to game. George Soto has the Graphics Esports on board. Graphics Esports, world-class design from the real world to virtual. Visit GraphicsEsports.com. And Chris Fowler has the Chris Fowler Racing on board. Join Chris Fowler on his sim racing journey through his live streams. Visit Fowler Racing on Twitch. Plenty of cameras throughout the pack as well for today's action. What's expected to be an intense race today. Of note, Jason Galvin will be starting this race from the pit lane. He was scheduled to start in the 12th position. But these drivers are all ready to go here at Kentucky for what should be an intense race. Competition, commitment, excitement. This is Lionheart. And this brings us to the start of the SimXperience Kentucky 200. iRacing pace car dropping off, this time by. It's Robert Malechka III in control of the field. Green flag is out, we're underway from Kentucky. And a great start by Malechka III as already several drivers scattering their way to the bottom of the racetrack. Along that yellow line, Vern Hawkins III gets shuffled out by 2 different cars to start the race. At the end of the first lap, it's factory-backed 1-2. Alexis Newsom leads. Malechka trying to ride the middle line. And finding clean air is going to be very important, Lorenzo. The aero wash can be pretty big here at this racetrack.
Absolutely, it's going to be a major factor in this race. But everybody getting away cleanly so far can run some pretty neat lines for the first few laps. After that, it's going to get clunky. You might have to lift off the gas, and then that's where attrition happens.
Trevor Malone under attack by Joe Branch, Hawkins III, Ken Hacker, Charles Teed, Ron Hacker in their group. That's now Hawkins III nearly coming up into the teal machine, coming off the corner. And I've noticed in practice a lot of drivers being able to charge turns 3 and 4, especially on fresh tires. So don't be surprised to see some big runs coming into turn 3 here tonight.
It's going to be interesting. The grip level is pretty much similar between the lines on the bottom and middle for 3 and 4, so they can basically stay side by side and remain all that way, all the way up to the start finish line, where someone maybe in the bottom line might have a little bit of an advantage.
Your top 3, keep in mind, are still Malechka, Newsom, and Taylor, who are all covered by 0.2 of a second. And Hawkins III is making it a foursome. You see all these cars being able to zip their way around the track at more than 200 miles an hour. But it's Hawkins III looking to break into the top 3 once again. And guess who is coming? Already Barrett Rolfe coming through the field pretty quickly, up +6 with your SimXperience on board.
Really impressive result, but someone we haven't seen so far is climbing up in the field is Greg Forsythe as well here. Justin started P16, is up to P9, and Nick DeGroot as well with a really good start as well.
+8 for Forsythe, +7 for DeGroot. You see that on your scoring pylon as Rolfe looking to try and find his way through the cluster of traffic that is more than 2 seconds already behind your leader. Meanwhile, Joe Branch goes back into line All while they continue to shuffle in front, and you can see just trying to use the different groups, a lot of width around this track with how wide the Legacy version Kentucky is, which allows you to run so many different groups and so many different driving styles as a result, Lorenzo.
Yeah, basically you have about 4 lines in the start-finish line, about 3 lines into the turn number 1 and 2, 4 to 5 lines on the back stretch, and then you claw itself back up to 3 just because it is ever-changing.
Already a few laps into this race. Keep in mind as well, the fuel strategy has been something very big this season, Lorenzo, in every single Speedway Series event. 40 to 41 laps is the estimation for today's fuel runs, so that's something to keep in mind for today's Trevor Malone. Get shuffled all the way back to 9th.
Yeah, we've been talking about maybe the start of the fuel range for pit stops might start on lap 14. And the max we can get 40 to 41 laps, and after that is every 40 laps each, so you can make about 3 pit stop race to make it to the 134 laps we have on the 200-mile running of this field.
They're racing very crazy behind Craig Forsyth right now, as Nick DeGroot continues to try and carve his way on forward. Forsyth the plus 10, as now it's become a 5-car breakaway for your race leaders. It is Malechka, Newsom, Ken Hacker, Hawkins, and Taylor, who are all grouped up together, who are trying to run away by more than a second from the rest of the field with all that fighting behind Branch and Forsyth.
And they're really looking forward to see what is the strategies for these 5, how they can save fuel and get to that 40 lap range, right, Justin? Because they go all out every single lap all the way up. I think they can make it up to 35, but it's again is those circumstances that make them race, not myself.
That whole group for 6 on back, though, you have to think, Lorenzo, is costing themselves time by swapping like this. They continuously are losing 2 to 3 tenths a lap to the race leaders at the moment with this scrap.
Yeah, scrap is 25.4 for Forsyth, Greer, and Branch, whereas everybody in the lead group is about doing 25 ones, zeros, and twos. So, yeah, I think they need to find a new strategy to get closer to them. Otherwise, it's going to become a little bit of a gap racing already at the start of the race.
It was something that came up during the IndyCar series here when they came to Kentucky earlier in the season. Something coming into play already here, as that whole pack, by the way, that is losing time, stretches all the way back to 27th position. That is more than 20 cars that are stretched within 3 seconds of the field right now, who are all trying to find their way forward.
And it's just insane that we go from 6th all the way to 2nd to last. The only car which is broken away is Jason Galvin, which I think had instant because he started from the pit lane, has to climb himself up with the yellow flags. Other than that, everything's very hectic on the mid side of the field. In the meanwhile, we have still this battle for the lead between Malechka, Newsom, and Hacker.
And for Ken Hacker, it's a very impressive start. 2 top 5s, 2 top 10s on the season in the first half of the campaign. But for Hacker, would be one of his best starts to a race, where we've seen him in a lot of cases get strategy. He finished 3rd at Homestead, finished 4th at Milwaukee, for example. But looking to try and up that here today with the strong performance here in that number 24.
Yeah, because he had his fair share of bad luck, right? Always getting within the top half of the field, but involved in a crash here and there. And despite the finishes at Homestead and the other tracks, he's still on the bottom of, like, I'm not going to say on the bottom, but it's somewhere he didn't want to be in the standings. He's right now 20th in the standings. So far he's bad. If he gets a really good run in here, I think that could boost him up about 4 or 5 positions in the standings so far.
To emphasize that point, he made it 4 laps at Texas. He made it 6 laps at Phoenix. He made it 30 laps at Michigan. As we look back in the heart of the pack, Barrett Rolfe is now up 10 positions and looking for more.
Is a repeat of Michigan here, Justin.
Just not as big of a run you can get here at Kentucky compared to there. You need to be able to take your time, Lorenzo, to be able to make your way through the pack, and that can be so difficult to do if you're Ralph, or even Chris Fowler, who's doing the same thing behind him.
Especially for everybody that's running close to one together, right? And you have to find a different lines, break yourself away from the draft itself. You're going to see the run. Oh!
A little bit of a tight moment there, and that's going to allow Chris Fowler to go on by. That was with Matt Wagner for position. George Anzotto gets zipped on by Rolf on the outside. And a bit of wing damage as a result of that, Lorenzo. How big is that going to be now?
It's going to be big. I don't know if he's going to be able to keep up very well under draft. Maybe he can catch up on the backstretch, but after that, on the turns, it's basically a sitting duck.
You see it on the left side, how crinkled up that front wing is now. He's still able to gain some time. That's the bright side, but it's potentially going to cost him time later on in the race if he elects to change that wing. Already halfway through our first fuel stint and having to find clean air up towards the front. Meanwhile, we look towards the head of that group. That is now a battle going on for what is essentially 10th position on the racetrack. Battle as far back as 8th, or far forward, I should say. With Teed, Stouffer, Branch, Rigney all close together. Teed trying to break away from this group, keep in mind. Nick DeGroot has already ran away from this pack with Craig Forsyth.
And Branch got a little bit of a bully moment. You know, got bullied around by the cars that are of DeGroot and Forsyth and Teed a little bit, and also Stouffer. So started 5th, backed up himself all the way down to P10. But again, a whole lot of race to go. We haven't even touched about 1/4 of the race yet.
Keep in mind the top two have completely broken away as well from Hacker, Hawkins III, and Taylor. They have broken the draft and then some. As a matter of fact, they are turning 0.2 of a second a lap quicker than the rest of the field. Incredible stuff from factory-backed 1-2.
Remember when I said they should be a team to look for in the second half of the season? They're just proving my point right now.
Yeah, that driver lineup is so very strong with Malechka III and Newsom both showing great speed, combined for 5 victories on the campaign. And don't forget, Nick DeGroot is also having one of his best races of the season so far, Lorenzo, in the 7th position. He's up 7 spots at the moment and was one of the drivers who was on a different strategy before last week. He's only had 4 top 10s. His best finishes have come at Michigan and Phoenix in 8th, Atlanta a 7th place run, top 10 as well at Homestead.
And DeGroot was one of those drivers who were in the big pack that kind of went for the overstand, you know, try to go for the overcut instead of the undercut of Taylor and the other drivers at the early portion of the race in Michigan. But the pit stops just made him break off a little bit. But nevertheless, a really good result so far for DeGroot.
And really good drive from Chris Fowler. As you see the Chris Fowler racing machine cut his way now past the Muscle Man for 13th. And that on board, again brought to you by Chris Fowler Racing, is your biggest mover of the race. Up 13 spots now on the day so far.
Impressive stuff.
Impressive indeed, as we're approaching about 10 laps or so from our first pit stops of the race. By the way, let's take this opportunity to look at your driver profile for today with Dean Mull, presented by SimXperience. 7 starts so far this season with 2 top 5s and 2 top 10s. The first start, of course, coming at Twin Wing Motegi, and of course, Dean Mull came away with the victory in what was an intriguing race where strategy came into play, tires versus no tires, fuel versus no fuel, and it ended up to where Dean Mull was able to stay out on the racetrack and win that race at Twin Wing Motegi to start off this series and its history. It was an impressive race for Dean Mull at the time to be able to come away with that checkered flag right now, running 23rd position in this race, Lorenzo.
And he can recover. You know, Mo had a really good starting of the race and then kept it up with the top 5. At the Legacy Texas Motor Speedway, we finished 5th, but after that, just couldn't find that stride, you know, just keep it within top 5, but always falling within the top 10. The only real blunder was not being able to participate in the IndyCar over at Homestead, which affected some of the points for Mo, but again, he can claw himself back up pretty much easily here in the field.
Looking at the HyperX on board, Tony Schauwen trying to make some moves, and he does. That was a pass for 15th position. And Tony has showed some great speed all season. The tough thing's going to be showing that speed to get back up to Barrett Wolf and his group.
It's going to be complicated because Rolf, talking about Rolf here, I know that Schauwen is the second in the standings right now in terms of points. But what Barrett Rolf is doing with that broken wing, as you guys see the battle for P15, 16, and roughly also 17 as well. It's been very impressive. I want to be able to do it, but nevertheless, it proves why they are on the track doing these moves and much more ready than I am to tackle these ovals.
Should be worth noting, by the way, that Jason Galvin, we mentioned, started from the pit lane. He's setting lap times comparable to the race leaders. He is almost caught up to the back end of the train and is within drafting distance just about of 27th position. Galvin's done an incredible job to push forward from half a track behind to get himself within range to be able to battle with some cars in the next few laps by the time pit stops are concluded.
Yeah, and we have to think mind as well that Galvin can also start saving a fuel a little bit once he gets within the back of Krasgy, right? So he has a lap down, not a lap down in terms of being the field, but a lap less because he started on the pit lane effectively in terms of fuel in comparison to the rest of the field. But so far, what a charge from Galvin so far.
That pace we mentioned, 25 Fords, also being done by these two, who have now cleared the rest of the pack by 3 seconds. And now they're starting to swap a little bit here, as Malechka has elected to come down on lap 36. Coming to lap 37 for Malechka.
And so right around on the money, I expected to Malechka to come into the pit lane. I believe Newsom is going to come into the pit lane right now. I wouldn't be surprised if Alexis comes into this lap or the next one, because she has been on the wing of Malechka pretty much the whole stint so far. So I wouldn't be surprised if she comes in this lap or not, but Malechka might lose a lap or two, but he will claw it back eventually.
Off and away goes Malechka to third in the factory back machine, an 8-second pit stop. And talk about this pit exit, because so many drivers I've seen end up slamming the wall here before in many different types of car. How tricky is that exit to make sure you don't loop it?
This is interesting. I've done the current air quotes in it version. I hate it. It's very tricky for you to nail it right. The legacy version I heard is just as difficult as the current version. So you cannot go full throttle. If you go full throttle, you're going to spin the car out. So you have to be very mindful where you put the foot in the gas and mind the bumps a little bit.
Looking at the battle going on for 8th. Mike Rigney, Christopher, Joe Branch, Trevor Malone amongst this battle. This is from Stouffer's back end, as Joe Branch tries to utilize the bottom. Can, as Chris Fowler again able to pick up another spot as a result, possibly, if he can complete it from the high line. Turn 3 and 4, no. But Newsom continuing to stretch it on forward. Ron Hacker has already made his way to the pit lane in the 21. Nick DeGroot has indicated he's coming in this time as well, as I think Newsom may have scraped the wall there on that entry into turn 3.
Let's take a look. I just want to take a look from my side, but doesn't look like it here, Justin, as now the pit lane is going to become a very busy pit lane to start lap 43.
So able to stretch the gas a little bit further than some of the estimates from prior to the race. That's going to be very critical for some of the mileage here. Newsom able to stretch it 42 laps. Remember, Newsom was second much of the first run of the race behind Malechka III. Now becomes the question, how does Robert Malechka III fare out here on the racetrack? Matt Taylor, Mike Rigney, Joe Branch, Tony Schowen, Barrett Rolfe, Matt Wagner among the drivers who have stretched it forward an additional lap. Malechka III is already down the backstretch.
And most impressively is we haven't had a single caution so far. So we 43 laps under green, and let's see if they can keep it up for the remainder of the race, because then again, that becomes a 3-stop race, and I think that is very interesting because these guys were stretching it up plus laps, more than 40. It's going to be interesting whenever they come out of the pit lane for their final services, because they can cut down about 2-3 seconds in terms of their final service.
And for Alexis Newsom, it was close to potentially getting a blue cone violation on the exit. Newsom had 2 wheels across the yellow line coming up onto the racetrack before the blue line.
Yes, that is very dangerous. I don't think she actually has gotten that, but it's that fine margin that the simulator gives you. So let's see if she gets away with it.
Still off and away goes several more for service. Matt Houston, Alexander Van der Sant, along with several others coming on in. Some battles forming up as a result after pit stops for Hacker, De Groot, and Hawkins the third. This is the battle for third. Keep in mind, all of them dialed in on strategy, as Alexis Newsom has lost 2 seconds as a result of the undercut from Malechka III. So the 91 is in the lead by a significant margin, and currently they are turning 25-2 still. That air group is turning 25-1s and 25-3s.
Yeah, I'm looking to see what's going to happen to Newsom. Now she's matched up the lap a little bit, 2:79 to Newsom, and whereas Malechka did it 2:11. But you have to keep in mind, there's a 6-lap difference between Malechka and Newsom. So whenever Newsom's tires get up to speed and it becomes the car lighter, she can catch up without much hitches.
Indeed, and right now that traffic is still at least a third of the racetrack ahead as we look at that battle going on. And some drivers trying to break up the draft, in fact. That's Hawkins third. They're already 7 seconds behind the race leader. What can they do to close up Lorenzo to be able to get to the front, to be able to have a shot at the race leaders? Other than the caution.
Other than the caution. For different lines, you know, I think they are doing that because Hawkins just did a 25-0 on the last lap, nearly matching his best lap of the race. So I think they pretty much have to work as many lines as they can get without, you know, getting clunkered to one another, and try to match up 25-1s, 25-2s on a daily, and then whenever the tire gets a little bit more burned up, try to match what the leaders are doing and minimize the loss.
Seen in the heart of the pack, by the way, Barrett Rolfe in the middle of a battle with Jason Galvin. Rolfe lost a lot of spots in the sequence trying to stretch the fuel out. Ended up taking a 13-3 as well, which means front wing on that car, Lorenzo. So having to scrap over again.
And the thing is, that is not an optional damage repair. That is actually a mandatory repair for the wing. So you lose effectively right about I'm not going to say 8 seconds, but 7-6 seconds in terms of changing wing. You lose right about 7 for the full service. So it's right about the estimated what I thought it would be for the full pit stall service.
Indeed. So see how Rolfe is able to recover as we look at some of the adrenaline machines swapping back and forth. This is for 13th. Not the day we expected from Adrenaline Motorsports today. Many of their drivers around the mid-pack. Back right now, Stouffer is the highest running of their drivers in 10th position.
And it's complicated, right, for you to be the leading team in the standings and underperform in a track. Of course, it isn't the easiest track in the calendar for you to perform well, because it's very tricky to nail every lap right, but nevertheless, let's look what Van de Sande is actually doing, because started second to last, had a lap that it was nullified on the qualifying, and now climbing himself back up due to all pace and strategy.
Strategy is so very vital indeed to be able to get around a track such as this, as well be able to gain positions. Absolutely. Already coming up to about 80 laps to go in what's been a blistering fast race. This field has really stretched out as well, from what was massive packs, Lorenzo, to mini packs, to about, some of them have about 5 or so cars, but majority of them are down to 2 or 3 car breakaways, which could be critical when the traffic comes into play for the leaders soon, especially since the leaders are still 2/10 quicker.
I agree. It's going to become a little bit tricky for Malecka. It's going to be tricky when Malecka and Newsom actually clawing themselves back together. The first car is Ron Hacker in the field, and you can see right at the tip of his camera going between 3 and 4 right now. So if Malecka keeps going like that, he can pretty much catch up to them at the very end of his stint, and that can spicy things up for the leader.
And we've seen many cases, Lorenzo, in the speedways. Traffic, once the leader gets in the dirty area, can be so critical. And it may be the chance for some of the air drivers to claw their way up in. And keep in mind the traffic that they're closing up to. You can see how aggressive some of them are getting here, like George Anzado with the Graphics Esports on cam.
And let's see what the Anzado is trying to do. You know, Anzado, I think he's trying to go for an overtake over here, Justin, but he's not finding the right lines to go for that overtake because he's getting shunted, not shunted, but blocked off on the line that he probably wants to have the best run. Let's see if he's going to be able to do that now.
Jason Galvin is the driver in front. Big run down the front straightaway, and again locked off on the run, not able to take it anywhere. As up in front of him, Nick DeGroot trying to clear for third. Bit of a weave there from Hawkins to third as they got really close going in down the front. That makes it a factory back 1, 2, 3.
And that would bring them, again, just doing mathematics here, Justin. It would bring them right about P2 in the standings so far. They would be able to bump Team Rev Race First Black out of P2 in the team standings and be right about, I think, 100 points away from Adrenaline Motorsports.
That's going to be very important if it holds, is the big thing. If.
Yeah.
Don't forget, some of these drivers are still shuffling their way through the field, such as Chris Fowler, who is trying to move up to the 8th position. That is Mike Rigney in front of the 00. It's been impressive the drive that he's been able to put on. No damage on that car either much of this run. Just been able to charge his way on forward. That plus 17 on the race as you see your biggest movers on the pylon.
He is actually the biggest mover in the race so far, Fowler. So having a really, really good race so far. And if he wants to go for Rigney on turn number 1, I think he probably will go for it. But for now, I think he's playing with the strategy. He has a few more laps than Rigney on the stint so far, 21 compared to 18 of Rigney. So I think for Fowler is just stuck back, try to save as much fuel as he can possibly save so he can go for the attack pre-pit lane.
As well, you may have noticed the gap is starting to chip down for Alexis Newsom to the back end of the 91. The tires are starting to come in possibly here, Lorenzo, because there is a difference of 6 laps, and it has been seen at tracks like Atlanta when there was a big advantage before, and other circuits, that the tires can matter. It's a little bit of a difference between these drivers. Malechka, in fact, a 25.4 last time to Newsom's 25.2.
Yeah, but she's getting closer lap by lap by lap, right? 1.5 seconds is the advantage right now that Newsom has on Malechka. So, again, I told you when the car was going to be lighter, and for Newsom, and the tires were a little bit rubbered up. She would be able to catch up to Malecka, save the fuel once again. The thing is, would she play the hair, overtake Malecka, play the hair at this point by, and let Malecka try to save some fuel prior to his pit lane?
We'll see. Newsom was able to save from before. Will Newsom pay the favor back is going to be a big critical part of this, as we're already within about 15 laps or so from expected pit stops, at least for Malecka. Some of the drivers with the earlier pit stop sequences. Cross flags up in the air, this time by as well at the stripe. What's been an incredible race as we look at some of the battles faring out. Nick DeGroot has now started to break away from Ken Hacker.
You cannot be able to do anything whatsoever, and that brings up Matt Taylor. You can see Matt riding on the, not far behind, you can see him right behind the Ken Hacker, trying to vouch for that P4 spot in the field.
Matt Taylor has had an incredible season across all Lionheart competitions. 3 top 5s in this series, 7 top 10s, and now move Taylor up to 4th. Near contact though. Going for the switchback is Hacker. Down the back straight away. Can he make it stick underneath the first seam in the bumps? Just about did. But Taylor's got the better run down the front straight away.
Yeah, and that happened because Matt Taylor's car just had a little bit of an arrow wash on the exit and washed up going to the outside line, and allowed the switchback of sorts for Ken Hacker, as we're seeing Malecka coming to the pit lane.
And the strategy makes more sense now because we're at 64 to go. It looks like, Renzo, that Malecka's trying to split this race up evenly, essentially into quarters or near thirds just about. He can essentially split it to 32 to go and then make it to the end.
Yeah, I would say that. I agree 100%. That is if I'm Malecka, that's the call I would do, and hope there's no yellow flags in between.
It's a big gamble, but it's something where, as a strategist, you have to essentially work in the parameters of expecting to go green. And it's looking like Malecka's expecting that to be the case.
You can see on the outside is Matt Taylor. I think he's going to try to contend the position of a Malecka. If I'm Malecka right now, try to let Matt Taylor go for a lap or two. Try to ride on his wing. Try to save some fuel. And then again, go for the overtake. Just let the tire build up a little bit.
Tony Shalin, of note, is trying something different in the 31. He's elected to come in after only 28 laps as well. So he has joined the same strategy as Malecka the third with similar pit stop times. Behind him, Ken Hacker continues to drop on back. More pit stops indicated over the radio. Vern Hawkins the third wants to go and try and split this up a little bit differently.
At 73 laps, you would come with 74. That would be right about 60 to go, right, Justin? So 30-30, so you don't have to worry about saving fuel. You're right around on the range, right? So just go for it.
And it looks like the difference of, do you want lighter fuel in the tanks for the end right now and the fresher tires, or do you want to try and split this up evenly or hope the undercut to be powerful? Well, that can come into play.
Assuming we go green all the way, and I would knock on the wood because of this, I would go and split halfway.
You would split it halfway?
Yeah.
We're about 60.
I would have to take care of the greens, though. We have to go green all the way. That's the biggest.
We're already past halfway in the race, if that's what you mean.
Yeah, we just need a full green run. If we have a green run, I would be safe.
AJ Musselman's come on in. Paul Jenkins has completed service this time as well. As we look now at one of the drivers looking to make some charges, that's Luis Gonzalez Nunez, who is up to the 13th position at the moment. Right on behind is Barrett Rolfe, who continues to also charge on forward, and he's going for the longer strategy, it appears, right now. He's now coming to 33 laps on his stint.
And another driver in the pit lane, by the way, Justin Craig Forsyth, another driver who decided to go for the 30-30 and split into the half.
Making it 35 laps. Keep in mind that Jason Galvin in front of Rolfe has done an impressive job today. Galvin has continued to pick off drivers one by one. That 42 is now in the middle of the field, right around where he started. Yes, there's been pit stops, but it's been incredible to see Galvin cut his way through this pack.
It's been nothing short of amazing, and I think if I'm the drivers in this middle of the pack, the one thing I really don't want is a yellow flag, because then it brings the Galvin strategy basically to what would be the perfect lane and allow him to make those moves on the restart. And that's the one thing you really don't want to defend from Galvin, a driver that actually has pace in this field.
Speaking of pace, it should be worth noting that Malechka III, who is still the first of the drivers who have pit by 12 seconds, is running lap times in clean air up to 4/10 quicker than Alexis Newsom. And Newsom has still yet to make it to the race, to the rest of the pack, I should say, in terms of traffic. So that's the difference on the tires right now. Nick DeGroot from Factory Backed has indicated he's coming in after 39 laps, so in comes the 89 machine for the second time. Ron Hacker also coming this time.
Yeah, looking, and we're seeing, I think Trevor Malone is going to come into pit lane as well, Justin. If I'm Newsom, I was going to say she needs to come right now where she doesn't have to be concerned about full fuel. She's going to have that small margin to come into maybe lap 120, right? So she would probably have about 14 to 15 laps in terms of better tires than Malechka. She's going to have to make up that ground to overtake him.
And just on cue, near perfect timing, in fact, Lorenzo, Newsom into the box. More pit stops expected this time. Matt Taylor's now the current race leader as a result. Malechka III still trying to get around Paul Jenkins. And they are racing pretty hard right now. Paul Jenkins, keep in mind, 6 laps on his tires right now. 1 lap down. Malechka III is on the lead lap.
And is that thing right that for those who are used with road racing is like if you get a blue flag, you probably would have to let the other guy go, like in open wheelers. But here is you have some blue flags just to let you know there is a faster car coming by, but it's not really a blue flag. This is basically a suggestion of blue flags, as Newsom is 7 laps back. But then again, you don't have to let go the other driver, right?
7 seconds is the differential indeed on that interval between Malechka III and Newsom. But the difference is about 12, 13 laps on their tires. How big will that be is going to be huge, especially with the traffic now starting to come into play. Malechka III continuing to battle with Paul Jenkins in the midst of all this. Jason Galvin also joins the fray into all this.
Nearly got a little bit hot between Galvin and Malechka in picture turn number 1 there.
And it can be frustrating as a driver to have this happen, but welcome to racing. They also have Barrett Rolfe, who is also in the midst of all this, who is in poor position in front as more pit stops. Joe Branch, Luis Gonzalez Nunez, George Anzaldo into the lane.
Yeah, the only drivers who haven't pitted. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, the only drivers who haven't pitted: Alex Vandersand, Matt Wagner, Matt Houston, and Jeff Heisong, and Dean Mole still have to pit.
And a majority of those drivers coming down this time by, in fact, as well as Christopher Kriegsky, who had a 1 minute and 24 second pit stop on his first service off, and away they go. Go some of the drivers to the inner end of the pit lane. So the 97, the 66, the 23 yet to pit They've extended it further along, and this is going to be the tough part for Vandersen. He's trying to get the service in with the midst of traffic around. That's Nick de Groot passing on by in 8th spot to get a lap back. Greg Forsyth is the first driver now, 1 lap down for the time being.
I think for those drivers who are up in the front, the thing that they want is come down to the pit lane, do their service, and maybe hope for a yellow flag. They will not lose their lap effectively, right? So the thing is, you're going to be hoping for a yellow flag so your tires can cool off a little bit and then come appropriately and attack the right way, as we're going to see Vandersen coming into the pit lane.
And that will close off this window of pit stops already. Able to stretch it to where it's going to be a tight 45-lap run to the end for the 97. And that actually could be interesting because there was an 11-second interval at the time of the pit stop for Vandersen. So we'll have to see how it plays out. Malechka the third, now to the lead. Newsom, more than 6 seconds behind, is in second. Vern Hawkins the third, making the move for third. De Groot and Forsyth, the correct top 5 for Enzo.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm looking where Vandersen is going to come out of the track. The thing is, the runoff is not the adequate one for him to come, but I expect him to come right about P14, 15, or 16.
Indeed. The closing stages here at Kentucky Speedway. It's been exciting to say the very least here on Racepark TV and ESTV. Green all the way through so far here at Kentucky. See how things play out here as we continue on. Under 44 to go here on Racepark TV and ESTV.
Wreck avoidances.
Stay low. He's high, stay low.
Daring passes.
Oh, you're going to get it.
Silly jumps.
Oh my god, a drive-through.
The thrill of victory.
They're against the wall. Good win, Mark. Stay low.
And the occasional mishap.
My sim crashed.
This is the DMLC Racing Channel.
Welcome back to RaceSpot TV and ESTV's coverage of the SimXperience Kentucky 200 presented by Chris Fowler Racing, live from the virtual Kentucky Speedway on iRacing. Justin Prince, Lorenzo Bonner with you with Una Kankapati in the director's seat, and what has been an intriguing strategy race. We have gone green the whole way so far at Kentucky, and Lorenzo, multiple different strategies about to come into play. We're expecting pit stops in the next few laps.
Yeah, we're expecting pit stop in the next few laps for some of the leaders like Robert Maleczka. He's going 30 laps, so splitting all the way even. So it's going to be interesting who has the better strategy coming away at the end of this race. This is looking like a redux version in terms of lengths of what we saw in Michigan right now, Justin, despite not having major packs.
And the interesting point to keep in mind with all this traffic as well for the race leaders is how some of these drivers get through the traffic. Newsom has closed up the gap to 6.2 seconds, and Maleczka is now in the midst of that lap traffic. Paul Jenkins, Luis Gonzalez-Nunez in front, as well as one driver to keep an eye on. You may see in the distance the number 97 of Alexander Vandersen. If he can stretch it 45 laps one more time, he might be able to steal this race as Newsom comes into pit.
All right, this is interesting. Shots fired first, and Newsom actually was on a very, very earlier stint than latter stint than Maleczka. So seeing her come into the lane first instead of Maleczka, it's interesting. I'm liking what I'm seeing here.
Only 20 laps of that stint for Newsom. So electing to go for the final stop earlier and see what Alexis can do. 8.5 seconds in the pit lane as we look at the battle for fourth position. And guess who is up there? Chris Fowler to fifth. Right behind Matt Taylor, Craig Forsyth providing the pressure in this battle.
And again, what a start for both cars, right? Both for Forsyth and Fowler, coming from the lower bottom of the field, like the lower half of the field, and clawing themselves back up. I think I just heard Maleczka will come into the pit lane here, Justin. But this battle has been great nevertheless.
I think it was a thank you possibly on the radio to George Enzotto, in fact. Enzotto is on the lead lap, but guess who is calling into pit? Vern Hawkins III among the drivers who will duck down this time. So the 25 down for the final time, and this is the split it up strategy at about 30 laps to go now for these drivers.
Yeah, looking here for Forsyth also coming in pit lane. I think I see Ken Hacker coming in pit lane as well. And Forsyth, I think he grazed the wall in between 2 and 3 on the backstretch. And now we see Maleczka coming in the pit lane like I expected, actually.
So a lap later. So we'll see how things play out in terms of the interval with the undercut being so powerful here tonight on the short run. Maleczka the third now into the box. Right now, Alexis Newsom, first of the drivers who have pit, is in 20th position. Off and away, Maleczka with a quick 8-second stop. One thing to note, Matt Houston may be on the same strategy, is a bit close to the wall as Maleczka the third. My goodness, he was facing the inside retaining wall for a moment.
Yeah, car got a little bit loose, but it's kind of expected for you to get loose on the track like that on variation. You just have to mind with a throttle, but that's playing it very close with the limits right there for Maleczka, but kept the car nevertheless still safe.
There's a little bit of time. It's 5 seconds now between Newsom and Maleczka the third. Of note, the 91 is the first of the cars currently scored, 1 lap down. That sees Nick de Groot continue the factory back domination in the race lead for the time being, just up the road from him in the 89. And as we are seeing more pit stops continue here, keep in mind, one driver overrunning their box. That's the first major mistake of the race, Lorenzo, we've seen from a driver, and it's Fowler.
And it's Fowler. The one thing you really don't want is you can see him coming out of the pit lane And now you see the Groot and the other leaders starting to come into the pit lane right now. Justin, Christopher as well. The only now P1 will be with Matt Taylor. Tony Shawan is now P2, but they have to come down at the pit lane eventually.
And all the eyes now focus towards that 97. Did a very effective job in saving to make it to 45 to go. Can the Team Race First Black Machine pull something off? We talked about it moments ago. The 66 may be on a similar strategy, but the problem is for Matt Houston, he only made it 44 laps on the last stint. So it is an even tougher task if you're in the 66 camp compared to this car, which is now in 6th.
Yeah, it's going to be really tricky to see what is going to be for Van der Sande to retain that feel all the way up to 45 laps, 44 laps. But I'm liking what I'm seeing over here from Van der Sande. That is kind of expected what we saw when we were talking about fuel stints beforehand here, Justin.
12 seconds the difference between him and Malechka the third at the moment. Tony Shawan has also ducked his way to the pit lane this time, so that leaves the drivers yet to pit in front. Taylor, Ralph, along with Wagner, Teed, and Anzotto are also drivers who are going to be interesting to see. Anzotto needs to pit. Guyon likely needs to pit as well in these closing stages.
Yeah, everybody in front of Van der Sande needs to pit. Like Matt Taylor needs to pit in about, if he's cutting like in the middle, he needs to pit in about 2 laps or 3 laps. Rolf, same thing. Wagner is on 27 laps, so he has to pit eventually. The only one who might really be safe again, it's Van der Sande.
And keep in mind where he's at allows him to save right now. Keep in mind, Robert Malechka III is running 6/10 quicker than him at the moment. Ran at 25 flat last time by. So that is going to be the major difference. Is Malechka III can go full out here, Lorenzo. Van der Sande has to essentially try and save as hard as he can.
Yeah, so basically taking a Alexander Rossi approach, so to speak, here in the track, right, Justin? But you're playing it close, and if he goes 0.6 of a second quicker per lap, there is a really good chance that the Malechka actually could contend in the final 3 laps or so for the win of this race.
And it'd be very close. Now, looking back to the 97, what is going through the mind is going to be the big question with all this pressure. Keep in mind, Van der Sande started off this race in 27th position. Right now, 13 seconds back of Matt Taylor, Matt Wagner in front as well on the racetrack. Rolf has already completed service this time. Will drop the 33 to that long list of 1 lap down competitors. Now 16 laps to go here at Kentucky. And Lorenzo, what do you think's going through Alexander's mind, knowing the pressure that's on him and the focus to be able to make it on the gas as we see the onboard with him? What do you think's going through his mind as he continues to save off Matt Wagner?
Please, no yellow flags. That's pretty much it.
If there's a caution, then it gets really interesting. Let's put it that way. There are only 9 cars on the lead lap.
Yes. Yeah, so this is interesting as we're hearing that Ron Hacker's coming to the lane. If we get a yellow flag, Matt Taylor actually might get away with this race, number 1. If we don't get a yellow flag, Alex could actually run away with this race, but it all comes down to how Maleczka is actually going to drive that car and how close it's going to be to finishing in the final 5 laps or so. So there are so many factors that is making this race really, really interesting as we are about to go 12 to go.
And Taylor seems to be hoping, indeed, absolutely, for that caution flag. Be a big victory for Taylor if that becomes the case. The gap is still 8 seconds, by the way, despite all this traffic trying to drive its way on by. Right now, Van der Sant is running 26-second lap times. The drivers who are not saving in the 25-4 still. Down to 12 laps to go. And Van der Sant will let by Trevor Malone on the high side. So add another car by.
He even, I think, put up a little bit on the brakes, like 10% braking. Just go, please. Just go. Don't get in my way. The thing is, this is really, really interesting how this is spinning out with 11 to go, because it's still all wide open. We don't know who's actually going to win this.
And coming to 10 laps to go, Matt Taylor is coming in. He cannot go any further. Only made it 40 laps on his stint. So the dream is over for Taylor. 10 laps to go at the stripe. Matt Wagner will now cycle to the race lead. And Robert Maleczka III has a lot of traffic to carve his way through still.
And you know what? This is, for Matt Taylor, this is not a letdown, but this is gutting because it's basically a repeat of what happened in Michigan. He had the lead, could not make it on fuel, and got shuffled basically a lap back, and just stayed right in the middle of the field.
For Van der Sant coming into tonight in this series, 4 top 5s, 6 top 10s. His best finish, a second at the Milwaukee Mile. Can he go one position better in the span of these next 8 or so laps is going to be huge. The question is going to be, will Matt Wagner be able to try and go for it here? He's been amongst this group here still, but the problem is Wagner would have to go 48 laps, Lorenzo.
And it's downrightly saying that you would have to take the foot off the gas appropriately every single corner, let the car roll every single corner, and hope, like a small sparkle, that Maleczka doesn't come with 7 to go.
Matt Houston as well, in case there is fuel trouble, is still 5 seconds behind. Maleczka III is under 7 seconds behind. Coming up to 6 to go, now at the stripe. As now Wagner lets by Jason Galvin. That's the 15th place car, now in the lead lap.
And Matt Taylor got shuffled back to 9th place at this time. And Matt Wagner will come into the pit lane apparently here, Justin.
And there it is right there. And a thank you coming over the radio from Alexander Van der Sant.
And Justin, I think Rob basically said good win. Conceded, I think.
Anything can still happen. Especially with now coming up to 4 to go. Maleczka still 6 seconds behind. Even has taken away second. Matt Houston could not make it. He only made it 42. Maleczka still having a battle with traffic. That's the downside right now. They're running 25-6s even for both first and second. 3 to go, coming up.
We're at the point of no return now, Justin. If you got a yellow flag, it's over.
And if he's pushing right now, he has to feel comfortable, you'd have to think, but he ran at 26.3 last time by. He's now closed it up to under 5 seconds. Malechka the third has. 2 to go coming up. Is there going to be enough fuel for Vandersen to be able to make it?
What a race.
And what a gutsy call from Alexander Vandersen to be able to stretch it this long on the gas. Came into play with 45 laps to go, and now, with a less than 4-second advantage, he needs to hold on for one more lap, final lap at Kentucky. Robert Malechka pushing as hard as he can. Vandersen still running the 26-second bracket. For much of the race, the focus was on factory backed. They were 1, 2, 3 at one point. But Alexander Vandersen will do the improbable. He runs out of fuel as he wins at Kentucky. He wins the SimXperience Kentucky 200 presented by Chris Fowler Racing. An incredible strategy and an incredible job to make it 45 laps, not once, but twice for Renzo.
Wow, what an effort from Alex Vandersen. Going 45 on the range twice is not easy to do, and then running out of gas on the line and getting away with the win. I think that's pretty much the perfect scenario that the 97 wanted. Malechka did his best, but the gap was just not there for him to close by and then contend for the win.
And I think Matt Wagner was the very big thing, Lorenzo, because without Wagner being as that fuel-saving car, who knows what the 97 would have been able to do. It was incredible to see what he was able to do today as he lets the car roll and coast to the start and finish line. An improbable victory and an upset at Kentucky. Absolutely stunning the strategy here today, as now he gets the chance to celebrate after one of the biggest fuel strategy gambles of the season, from green to checkered. As we take a look at your Carnox results, Alexander Vandersen holds on to win running out of gas by 3.5 seconds over Robert Malechka, with Alexis Newsom, Nick DeGroot rounding out the top 4. It could have been a factory back 1, 2, 3, but the strategy dice was rolled by Team Race First Black. They've rolled the dice all season, Team Race First. They strike with the victory today. Christopher, I should say, finishes in 5th, with Chris Fowler, Team Race First Red in 6th. Craig Forsyth, Matt Taylor, Tony Showen, and Vern Hawkins III round out your top 10. Ken Hacker finishes in 11, had a strong first half of the race inside the top 3 at one point, with Trevor Malone in the 12th position. Jason Galvin, Barrett Rolfe in 14th, Luis Gonzalez Nunez 15th, Joe Branch, AJ Musselman, Alex Guillon, Matt Wagner, George Anzotto, the top 20. 21st spot, Ron Hacker, Jeff Young in 22nd, Mike Rickney in 23rd, Dean Mull, Paul Jenkins, Matt Houston, Christopher Kresge, and Charles Teed round out the top finishers today. Charles Teed, of note, had technical issues in the closing stage of this race. That brings us into our HyperX post-race show, because the Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the luxury ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperxgaming.com. And don't forget to use the promo code LionHRT15 for 15% off orders. With that, it's time to head to HyperX Victory Lane, where Alexander Vandersen is now standing by. The first question we have to ask Alex is, how did you make it 45 laps, not just once, but twice, to come away with an improbable victory?
Barely. It was so close. I especially at the end, where everybody had much fresher tires than I did in those last few laps, so I couldn't stay with them. And once Matt pit, I had no help, so I just had to make sure I had enough to have a buffer there, and it was just enough. So I can't believe it worked. Matt Wagner and Joe Branch, I owe them beers or whatever they want to drink, because that was they just let me chill out behind them. I think Matt ruined his own strategy doing that. I don't know why, but like they totally saved me there. So thanks to them, thanks to my team. Yeah.
Absolutely incredible. And what came down to the decision to say, you know what, let's try it in this race tonight?
Well, it didn't count my fastest qualifying lap. I think it's because I went to the apron, but I don't know exactly. So I started second to last. So it's like, okay, I'm going to be mired in traffic. It's really hard to pass. Might as well just see what I can do in these first few laps to like what numbers I can hit. And then I realized, this might be possible. And then when it started going green the whole way, which shocked me, I just had to commit to it. And at some point it was, past the point of no return. And it just worked out.
An absolutely incredible way to end off the first half of the season. The second half of the season, though, is going to be an interesting one. It's the Sim Racing Studio Indy 500 presented by Chris Fowler Racing. 500 miles, 200 laps on Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Your thoughts for that one to start off the second half of the season in July?
Well, I've never won a 500-mile race. I have won races in Indy, so it's a good track, best track in the world, honestly. So I have no idea how it's going to race in this car, though. But really looking forward to seeing how it turns out and keeping up this momentum.
Congratulations on the victory once again, Alexander. Incredible stuff on the fuel.
Thank you.
Alexander Vandersent does the improbable. 27th to 1st with a gamble on fuel strategy. Robert Malechka III, it was the thought process of it was looking like he would come away with the victory after pulling away from his teammate Alexis Newsom early on in this race by multiple seconds. It wasn't meant to be, though, tonight, Robert. How are you feeling about your run P2 tonight?
Yeah, I'll take it, to be honest. We knew it was going to be, pretty close with the fuel save, but since we were out front, we didn't want to risk it and fall back in the pack and maybe get caught up in a wreck. But, I saw Alex made it to lap 45, and I knew he could make it. But, man, if this race was one lap longer, I would have been golden.
Yeah, it was close, to say the very least. Talk us through the early stages of the race as well, because the factory back machines were able to break away pretty quickly from the rest of the pack.
Yeah, we knew we had this all-out pace with me and Alexis just riding 1-2. We got the 1 point leading a lap, and then we just put our heads down and kept hot lapping as much as possible and got, I think at the end there, 10-second lead. I think Alexis had damage. I thought I maybe got 4 damage entering pit road on the first stop. It felt like I was half a tenth slower than usual, but I don't know really what it was.
That's interesting to hear the potential of damage. How tricky is it to prevent that then here at a track like Kentucky, and something to reference for the future then, with that pit entry?
Yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of guys were going, I don't know for sure, but I felt I was pretty late on bringing the car down from the banking onto the apron to pit entry. But I think the first time I was earlier than I wanted to, and it could have caused damage. I don't know, but, hats off to Alex. He drove a great race.
Indeed. Congratulations on the P2, Robert.
Yep, thank you.
Robert Malechka, the third, coming home in second. Alexis Newsom rounds out the top 3. And Alexis, how are you feeling about your run tonight, first of all?
Well, I feel pretty good about it. I got side pod damage about halfway through the race. And I'm really happy to just hang on to a podium.
Indeed, when it comes to this race, talk us through your strategy gambles and strategy calls here, because it seemed like there was 2 different strategy thought processes today from factory back. Talk us through your side of the strategy here tonight.
Yeah, Robert wanted to short pit a lot, and that really worked out for him. But I kept thinking that the caution was going to come at any time, so I was afraid to do that at first. Didn't do it until the end. And we didn't think anybody would be able to make it if it went green. We did not even expect that at all. So that really caught us off guard.
Indeed, congratulations on the podium finish, Alexis.
Thanks. Thank you, guys.
Alexis Newsom rounds out your top 3 here in what was an improbable race. Renzo, have to turn to you for your final thoughts, because strategy to end off the first half of this regular season is absolutely incredible. Strategy came into play in some of the races early on. Strategy comes in a big way at Kentucky.
Yeah, he came a big way at Kentucky. What a drive from Alex van der Sande, by the way, and looking like I was looking. He maybe is now the runner-up in the standings so far, but everything can change because next round, Justin, is the second round of the Triple Crown. It's Indianapolis, 500 miles, double points. Everything can change in the blink of an eye. Can't wait to see what will happen in about 3 weeks' time.
It's going to be an exciting race, to say the very least, and going to be very challenging for our drivers. But let's take the opportunity to thank our sponsors for tonight's action for the Lionheart Racing Series. DMLC Racing Channel, the presenting sponsor of the Speedway Series. Looking for entertaining sim racing content? Look no further than the DMLC Racing Channel. Follow former Lionheart Retro Series Driver of the Year Mark Cohn's racing escapades as he battles for wins and avoids wrecks with cat-like reflexes, all while providing commentary sure to make you laugh, cry, or both. Follow along by subscribing to the DMLC Racing Channel on YouTube, or like his Facebook page at the DMLC Racing Channel. The Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary Ultra Comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperxgaming.com. And don't forget to use the promo code LionHRT15 for 15% off orders. The SimXperience AccuForce Pro V2 is the premier professional simulation racing steering system. The key to its incredible realism is the groundbreaking direct drive motor control system, providing a driving experience that's second only to the real thing. For more information on the entire SimXperience ecosystem, visit SimXperience.com. For sim racers, the Butt Kicker Gamer 2 or Simulation Kit adds the missing driver-to-car connection, bringing more realism to your sessions. By accurately responding to in-game audio, you can feel the track like never before, providing increased vehicle handling and faster lap times. Are you ready for the most immersive experience in sim racing? For more information, visit thebuttkicker.com. And don't forget to use the promo code LION2021 for 20% off orders. Minus 273 is the premier name in karting gloves. Their industry-leading gloves are super lightweight and durable, made of breathable polyspandex. Whether you're a kart or sim racer, Minus 273 gives you the control to reach victory lane. For more information on Minus 273's full line of gloves and apparel, visit minus273.biz. Don't forget to also use Minus 273 LHRS15 for 15% off orders. And it's not just those 5 names, but so many more, and all the partners at the Lionheart Racing Series that you see on screen are part of all the work seen on a week-to-week basis. To learn more about them, visit LionheartRacingSeries.com. You can find out more information on the 3 competitions that the Lionheart sanctioning body runs. Lots more Lionheart competition to come. To follow along with said action, be sure to keep up with Lionheart on social media at Lionheart Series. ESTV also has your esports needs, while RaceSpot TV has your V Motorsports action covered. Be sure to follow along on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and more. Be sure to hit the YouTube subscribe button as well as the notification bell so you keep up with all the sim racing action we get to cover. The next Lionheart race heads to the Retro Series for Sonoma next week, July the 8th. Be sure to tune in on RaceSpot TV and ESTV. But with that, it's time to say goodbye. We'd like to thank you for tuning in for the SimXperience 200 presented by Chris Fowler Racing. Congratulations to Alexander Vandersen, your winner from Kentucky.